I don't know what to do with a whammy bar. My old Strat is a hardtail. So this one actually does not have a whammy bar. I don't know what to do with that. Jeff Beck is the master. You know, I bow to him, and he actually uses it creatively, and he plays whole lines on it. If you've heard him do Somewhere Over the Rainbow on his new album, he plays entire lines of melody with the whammy bar. The guy's the greatest on the earth, I think. But I don't know what to do with it. I never did. Roy Buchanan didn't use one. Clapton doesn't use one. So I just don't use them. Personal preference. You ever see Roy Buchanan live? Yeah, well, I saw him when I was a kid. We got some hum going here. Getting a hummer here, a sound guy. Anyway, we'll try that. I saw him playing some bars when I was a kid on the East Coast. He was known among guitar players. And you know, you could go into this little club in Maryland called the Crossroads Tavern just outside DC, and he played 5 hours a night. And that was astounding. And I would drive down there with my buddies from Philly, and before we were old enough to get in, we would stand outside the club, and they would open the door so that we could hear the music. And then on the breaks, Roy Buchanan would come out and hang out with us. And then years later, I was in John Mayall's band, and we were touring Germany, and Roy Buchanan was on the bill with us, and I had to do 60 shows with him as an opening act. And he toured on the bus with us, and I got to become his friend and jam on the bus with him. But he came up to me the first night and he said, "Hey man, I really like your guitar playing. How about we trade some licks?" And I said, "I don't have anything to trade you, but I will take whatever you want to show me." You know, and so I sat in the back of the bus, and he showed me quite a bit. He was a gentleman, wonderful person. And I did see Jimi Hendrix. I stood right in the front in Philadelphia. He was 5 feet from me, and but I had to stand up there leaning on the stage through 6 bands to get to him. So by the time he came on, I was a little under the weather. You know, I'd heard a lot of music, including the original incarnation of the Manhattan Transfer when they were hippies, and they sang scat music for 2 hours, and I was in a coma. I'd had it. Yes, young fella. I started the guitar when I was 10 years old. I was a trumpet player, and I was studying trumpet to be a jazz musician. I wanted to play jazz, and I even got to, as a little kid, I got to hang out with Duke Ellington. And so I was really into it, man. And my brother one day changed the direction of my life. He brought home a record and put it on, and it was the very first album by Bob Dylan. This was in 1961. And something snapped in me at that point, and I wanted to get an acoustic guitar and learn those songs and strum chords and sing those songs. And so I got an acoustic guitar and started teaching myself. And then along came the Beatles, February 9th, 1964, Channel 2, 8 p.m. Sunday night, Philadelphia, Ed Sullivan. I was in the 7th grade. That was it. And about a year or two later, my brother again put a hurtin' on me. He brought home a record and said, "Well, you like electric guitar, you gotta hear this." And it was the first album by the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. And it had a fella named Michael Bloomfield on guitar. And nobody on the face of the earth at that time played electric guitar like Michael Bloomfield. Nobody. And after I picked my jaw off the floor, I realized right then what I was going to do for my life. And that was it. I was done. So I was 13 or 14, and from that moment, this is all there's been for me. Yes. It's done with the volume button. You wrap your pinky around it, you hit the note, and you... Roy Buchanan. Yeah. Yes, I have. Bugs is a good friend of mine. I love him. Right. If you see him again, tell him I say hello. He's great. Great player. Can't hear you. Do I practice? Well, I have a wife and 3 kids, so when I'm at home I try to be a dad and get to know my children again, because I'm out on the road for 7-8 months of the year. Now, they're with me all summer, which is great for me, but I do a thing, and I do it every day. I call it practicing in your head, which is you can get to a certain technical point with your instrument where you're limited by your imagination, and it becomes a matter of what ideas you think of to play. It's not just about trying to play faster or something. That's not what this is about. But so when I'm riding in the van, for instance, I put on my iPod, I listen to some music, and in my head, I play along and I try to think up something different that I've never played before, and I think about how to do that while I'm doing it. And I actually did that as a kid also. I'd be sitting in school, the teacher'd be talking, and in my head I was playing with Paul Butterfield, you know. So a lot of it happens up here. Yeah. Well, I have a home studio. I'm an old guy, so I'm old school. I have a 4-track cassette recorder that I bought in 1984. I've done 20 CDs. I've written all of them on that 4-track cassette recorder. It's in my garage on a little desk. So my home studio is this big. Here's the desk. Here's the 4-track cassette recorder. I have a toy drum machine I bought at Toys R Us for 90 bucks. It has 100 different patches. I turn one on that's a shuffle that you can go. You can play to that, or there's one that... there's different beats. That last one, I've written a lot to that patch, like... My song Got a Broken Heart was written to that patch. A bunch of them were. On this record that I just did, I had a major problem in that I went out to start writing it because I only write under pressure. They set up the recording session. They go, okay, you're gonna make a record in a month. And my wife says, okay, you're making a record in a month. And I'm watching TV and I go, yeah, what about it? She goes, what are you gonna record? And I go, oh. So I run out into the studio and I spend the month writing songs. And I go into a certain zone. It always causes stress. In the middle of this last one, my wife sent me an email and told me I was becoming mentally unstable. That's the truth. But anyway, I ran out there to start recording, and the 4-track cassette recorder was not working. So I went over to Guitar Center and found out that you can't get a 4-track cassette recorder anymore. So I bought this digital thing. I brought it home. I messed with it for 2 days, and in a torrent of cursing and screaming and throwing stuff at the wall, I gave it to my 14-year-old son, Mike.